The media either lies, ignores it, or actually supports the rioting. And then downstream from that, the Democrats do basically the same thing. We had Jerry Nadler recently say that Antifa violence in Portland's all a myth. It's not the first time he called Antifa a myth. But today, Attorney General William Barr absolutely obliterated the Democrat and media lies about what's going on around this country when they let him speak, mind you. The Republicans actually played a video showing all of the violence, which is funny considering Jerry Nadler himself said the violence was a myth. Then they played this very long video proving it is, in fact, not a myth. Yet the Democrats still tried to maintain this position. Now, I'll tell you this. The hearing with Bill Barr was absolutely painful. I feel for this man. Every single time, for the most part, a Democrat would ask him a question, they wouldn't let him actually answer anything. So it was quite frustrating to not actually get to hear what the man had to say. Republicans actually did give him a chance to speak, and when he did, he roasted the lies from the media, and the media is becoming increasingly desperate. Over the past couple of segments I've done on this channel, I've talked about Donald Trump winning the propaganda war, and boy, do we have more proof. Not only did the Republicans thoroughly debunk the myth nonsense, I mean, let's be real, most of us have Facebook and Twitter. We can share a video and our friends and family can see what's really going on down there. But the media has absolutely tried to spin the narrative in pure desperation. The riots have begun helping Trump. That's how desperate and panicked they've become. First, they tried claiming, in fact, Donald Trump wanted the riots. Well, that's strange because that would imply Donald Trump controls Antifa, which he clearly doesn't. And Bill Barr points out the Black Lives Matter protest in Portland is, quote, an assault on U.S. government. Well, that narrative's not going to work anymore. So if it's not about Trump inciting this to try and drum up a re-election campaign strategy like some Democrats insinuated, what could it really be? I kid you not. The media has now decided to roll with the narrative that secretly the violence is being instigated by, you guessed it, the white supremacists. Those black-clad individuals that we call Antifa, in fact, are not Antifa. They are, in fact, disguised white supremacists trying to cause violence and chaos. And, of course, there's a separate narrative emerging that the real threat is, in fact, not Antifa, but in fact, the far right. Even The Guardian recently put out a story saying there are no deaths tied to Antifa. And I love this fake argument, as if anyone's comparing death counts and being like, who do you think is the one group we should complain about? Only the one group who's killed the most people, in which case communists would take the cake. No, we're talking about bad things. Guess what? Far right extremists, really bad. Really, really bad. Yeah, basically everybody agrees. Far left extremists, also really, really bad, but for other reasons. You don't have an argument that one group is worse than the other. Fine. It doesn't make any of those groups good. In fact, the far left and Antifa are really bad. They engage in this violence, they sustain this violence, and it actually ends up helping Donald Trump in the long run. And that's why the media is in a full-on panic. You see, peaceful protests work. Lo and behold, we've all known it. When happy, smiling people hold hands and sing under a rainbow, it works. The only problem is that has happened in Portland with people singing songs. Personally, I don't like it. I think it's weird and creepy, but good for them. The problem is almost within like the next half hour or so, somebody's lobbing industrial grade fireworks into a building to try and burn it down. Gunshots are going off. People are losing their lives. So yes, unfortunately, there may be peaceful protests. They're becoming riots. And Bill Barr laid it out very, very well. And the funniest thing, I've got this Daily Beast article pulled up, but guess what? They don't actually quote what he said. It's hilarious. They try and weasel their way around it. Oh, look, man, I get frustrated by fake news, but it is kind of hilarious to see how desperate the media is becoming. So let's talk about what Bill Barr had to say just a little bit. It was a long hearing. And I want to talk to you about what the media is doing and what you can expect with these riots next. Because in the end, all of this is about Donald Trump and the Democrats fighting over the suburbs. That's right, the suburbs, the big battleground. Let's see the first story. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do, just subscribe to this channel, man. More than half of the people who watch just about aren't actually subscribed. So if you do watch and you want to make sure you get more content from me, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit the like button, and consider sharing the video to help spread the word. Here's the first story. I'm not going to spend too much time on, though. AG Barr calls Black Lives Matter protests in Portland an assault on U.S. government. In highly anticipated testimony, the Attorney General wouldn't say he hadn't discussed the federal crackdown in the context of Trump's reelection. Absolutely confusing and mixed framing, mind you. They say, asked by Chairman Jerry Nadler if he discussed the politics of the crackdown with Trump or anyone in his inner circle, Barr didn't specifically mention the Department of Justice operations, but confirmed that election comes up in his conversations with the president. I'm a member of the cabinet, and there is an election going on. I'm not going to get into my discussions with the president. As well, Barr indicated he views protesters in Portland, Oregon, not as demonstrators demanding black liberation or defending themselves from an unwanted federal intrusion, but as insurrectionists. Yeah, well, Bill Barr would be right. You can't show up to federal property and attack it. And then finally, 39 nights later, when the Fed says, hey, we're going to stop you now, go, help, help, I'm being repressed. But that's exactly what the media is trying to do here. Quote, what unfolds nightly around the courthouse cannot reasonably be called a protest. It is by any objective measure an assault on the government of the United States. Later in his response to GOP questioning, Barr thundered, is that okay? In outlining demonstrators' alleged offenses against federal officers. I reject the idea the department has flooded anywhere and attempted to suppress demonstrators. We are at the courthouse defending the courthouse. We are not out there looking for trouble. But hold on a minute. There's some words missing from their quote. What is that okay? That's the only thing they quoted is what okay. Come on, Daily Beast. Why don't you show the full quote? Oh, it's because the leftists in media are starting to panic. The riots are awful. People hate them. They barely like the protests. Some poll, I believe it was Gallup, came out and said 2 out of 3 people support the protests. So that's pretty good. But the polling ended, I believe, on July 6th. I wonder how many of these people feel now that things have devolved into outright rioting. But it is fair to say peaceful protests work. I love it. I accept it. It's an American institution. You want to go out and peacefully protest? Please do so. Stand up for yourself. Stand up, speak up, everybody. Awesome. Violence? No. None of that. Don't do that. And most people don't like that. Civil disobedience may bother people, but I'm actually okay with that too, because I think there's a line where you gotta nudge people a little bit. And I mean that figuratively. You'll end up getting arrested for civil disobedience, like, painting something, graffiti even, people got to clean it up. Well, graffiti is a bit, I don't know. That one's a little bit more complicated because you're actually costing people money. But sitting in a street or walking in the street. Okay. Well, let's take a look at what the actual quote was. From Town Hall, Attorney General William Barr, quote, federal courts are under attack. Since when is it okay to burn down a federal court? Is that okay? Is that okay now? Oh, that's the missing part of the quote the Daily Beast didn't want to tell you, because they don't want you to know that people are trying to burn down a federal courthouse. Or whatever. I don't know exactly why they omitted that quote, but it sounds to me like they're just trying to make sure you don't see it. You know why? How hard would it have been to include a few extra words? Since when is it okay to burn down a federal court? Oh, the Daily Beast can't do it. Bill Barr thundered, is that okay, in outlining alleged offenses against federal officers? No, he didn't. That's not true. He literally said, since when is it okay to burn down a federal court? Come on, media. Oh, I'm sorry. The media has become so desperate. The narrative is becoming a joke. And Bill Barr roasted them. You know what really bothered me about this hearing? What bothered me is that when the Republicans would speak, they'd say, can you answer this question, Bill Barr? And he'd answer the question. And the Democrats would speak, and any time Bill Barr tried to speak up, they'd say, I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time. What do you hear? They're grandstanding. You know what the issue is? Jerry Nadler lied over and over again. Here's a story from Fox News. Antifa is very real and very dangerous, Rep. Jordan says, reacting to Rep. Nadler's claim the movement sparking violence is a myth. Antifa has no defined organizational hierarchy or membership process. And Bill Barr gave a remarkably succinct and excellent answer when asked about Antifa and domestic terror. He said, it's not a national movement. In fact, many of these groups, due to their anarchic nature, fight with each other But there is substantial organizing before events where they organize around events. So yes, they're being investigated as such. Jerry Nadler said it was a myth. And Bill Barr annihilated, roasted, obliterated this lie. And that's why they didn't want to let him speak. Because when Jim Jordan showed the video of all the violence, what was Nadler to say then? With a smirk on his face, maintains the lie. And all the Democrats tried playing the same game. In fact, one guy tried insinuating that Bill Barr was being racist or something due to his personal opinion on COVID, which was nonsensical. Antifa is not a myth. But certainly the media tries to do two things. Either argue Antifa doesn't exist at all, or they try to straw man by claiming people like me are saying that there is a large organization with billions of dollars called the Antifa with a leader who organizes commanders. No, that's never been the case. Antifa has always been a loose-knit, cell-based group, movement. They fly the same banner. They have the same symbols. They organize in this way to protect themselves from law enforcement, but they do share end goals. That's it. So some of them have brand names. They name themselves. They sell merchandise. That's a reality. Let's take a look at how the media's desperation is beginning to manifest. Oh, this is so good. Violent protest clashes turned Portland into a right-wing boogeyman. Here's how it happened. Ah, yes. Washington Post, July 21st. I did mention some of these stories. I'm going to go through this quickly for you because you may have seen my segment from yesterday, but you need the context. And then I want to tell you what you can expect next as the battle for the suburbs continues. And the reason I say battle for the suburbs is because, well, first of all, Trump is trying to win the suburbs for sure. But this is why you see the wall of moms. That's right. The wall of moms who are now suing the city because they're trying to make suburban mothers feel like they are being attacked. So they have all of these middle-aged women wear yellow shirts, pretend to be this wall of mothers, and maybe many of them really are mothers. I get it. That's fine. But they're engaging in violence. There's one viral video now from NBC where a mom is screaming, "Why am I here? Why do I have to be here?" And I'm just like, you don't. You can go home and have a nice cup of tea with some crumpets or something, whatever it is, moms do. I don't know. You get the point. They don't got to show up to the courthouse and throw bricks at cops or try and pull down barricades. So don't play that game with me. Here's the important point. The Washington Post said it was a right-wing boogeyman. That's right. The right is saying, oh, violence. Oh, no, what's happening? And everyone else is saying, it's just a boogeyman. The boogeyman's not real, right? What are you scared of? Nothing's going on. And now it's slowly starting to evolve. From it being a right-wing boogeyman, it started to become Trump's effort. Trump's effort to provoke. Violence is working. The president sent federal agents into Portland with the apparent aim of inciting a confrontation. It's just so stupid. For 39 nights, Trump did nothing. Nothing. And Bill Barr did nothing. And after 39 nights of violence, they sent in feds to protect a courthouse that people were throwing industrial-grade fireworks at to try and burn down. And now it's Trump's effort. You see, it goes from a right-wing boogeyman. There's no violence. Look not behind the curtain. There's nothing happening here. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. And now it's, well, Trump was trying to do it. Trump was trying to make it happen, but I'm not going to stop there. It gets even better. Wait till you see the latest narrative from the press. This is my favorite. You see, first they said it was a boogeyman. Then they said Trump was trying to make it happen. Now it's white supremacists. That's right. Umbrella Man was a white supremacist trying to incite George Floyd rioting. Police say the suspect has been identified, but no charges had been filed as of Tuesday afternoon. Okay, here it comes. Maybe the guy really was, sure, fine. I don't know who this guy is, but I find it so convenient that a week ago, they were telling us we were experiencing fear of a boogeyman who didn't really exist. And now they're telling us actually, the riots are being instigated by white supremacists disguised as Black Lives Matter. I tell you what, man, the desperation in the news is amazing. But to be fair, in both of these stories, it is the police who are making the claim. So perhaps there really are white supremacists disguised as activists and marching and rioting with Black Lives Matter. I'd just like to point out, personally, I believe Antifa are literally white supremacists. Maybe not like identically, but have you seen that viral video from the comedian Ryan Long where the woke guy and the racist guy basically believe the same things? That's the point. I wonder if that's what the police are really talking about. But fine. Okay, fine. So maybe it's the police who are making these claims and it's not some biased journalists because these are just local news outlets. Okay. How about this? Right-wing domestic terror is on the rise. Did the warning signs evade us on July 21st? How amazing that when the riots start backfiring on the Democrats and the media, that the narrative has begun to change. That's right. What is now jihadists plot to use used to be the U.S. and Europe's biggest threat. Now it's the far right. An increasing percentage of plans and attacks on the U.S. are linked to far right activity, said Seth Jones. Why do I care about Seth Jones's opinion right now? Is something happening with the far right? No, it's not. But hold on a minute. These stories emerged about, the far right about a week or so ago, several days ago. And then the narrative emerged that it was actually not Black Lives Matter, but white supremacists. You see how it all glues together? Bill Barr stands up figuratively and he says, when is it okay to burn down a federal courthouse? And where are the Democrats? Where is the media? They omit it. I don't mean all media, obviously. There's local news, there's conservative media, there's real journalism out there, but the leftist media apparatus, which functions as an arm of the Democratic Party. Oh no, the riots are hurting us. I'll tell you why the riots are hurting you. Check this out. Black Lives Matter protests extend into America's suburbs and towns, June 10th. Yes, when everything was getting crazy and violent and people were getting scared, violence was extending into suburbs, and this shocked many, many people. And boy, did it help Donald Trump. You see, there were 31, I believe, suburban areas. I believe they were mostly suburban, where they voted for Trump in 2016 and then elected a Democrat to Congress in 2018. What could Trump possibly do to win the suburbs back? Well, Trump has tried claiming, I'm the law and order guy, right? Well, does it really matter? Do people believe it when after 39 nights of violence in Portland, he wasn't doing anything? Finally, he goes in and he sends in reinforcements. And they try and argue that it was intentional so he could get videos and photos of him being, the police going out there and doing the right thing. And you know what? Whether it was intentional or not, he was right. It's the fault of the far left and Antifa who have been going out and getting violent and scaring people that will help Trump. Well, guess what? Here we go, baby. Trump is not making these people do this. Donald Trump does not control Black Lives Matter or Antifa. Black Lives Matter organizers traveled to suburbs to take on Nike from July 27th. Is Donald Trump having secret meetings with Black Lives Matter saying, can you help me get reelected by going to the suburbs and scaring people? No, he's not doing that. I was in a small Philadelphia town I won't name because I don't want people to know exactly where I've been. But I was in a small town and there was a huge crowd of people protesting for Black Lives Matter and they were marching around all through this small town. And most people didn't care. But I'd imagine a lot of people were like, after all the riots, I got to say, I don't feel comfortable. They were in the street. They're honking. They're holding up signs. They're yelling. That's getting scary. After all the riots, and it's Black Lives Matter riots. We know who these people are. They're putting up the signs in Portland. I'd imagine people in the suburbs are getting antsy about this and getting worried, saying, keep this away from me. Not in my backyard, they say. Oh, but there's more than this. Here you go. Here's from NBC 21. Canfield Black Lives Matter rally asks suburbs to look in own backyards for racism. Whoa, that's quite literally in their own backyard. Talk about NIMBY, huh? They're literally coming to your home and saying, what's going on in your backyard? Well, this solidarity march is not the photo. I love it. This photo they're showing is Blue Lives Matter, and there's a Gadsden flag, and they're waving Trump signs, but sure, I appreciate the imagery. My friends, there's so much more. Portland suburb sparks flap after raising Black Lives Matter flag over City Hall. Gresham, Oregon. Yep, it's coming. Crowds launch fireworks at brewery, draw guns on drivers as riots spread from Portland to smaller Oregon City. It will come to the suburbs, and Trump can't control it in the sense like he's not making these people do this, but Trump will be on standby to deploy federal law enforcement to protect them should they ask. And Bill Barr stated in his testimony, they have been. It's true. A story from Reuters showed that people in Chicago were asking for FBI assistance in the ongoing increase in lethal crime. Not just violent crime, because crime for the most part is down, but murders are going way up. So here we can see the narrative is just, It is a fractured and broken world, man. I tell you what. But I believe what we are seeing right now with the wall of moms, the fighting, it's an attempt to make Trump, look, I think a lot of the rioting, they tried to weaponize the photos of the police to smear Trump and make it seem like, he's this, authoritarian dictator. I don't think they realized that it backfired. As I stated yesterday, a lot of people don't know this. Well, at least one of the reasons, I should say, for the Fifth Amendment, pleading the Fifth, remaining silent, is that if you're sitting in court and it's your word against a cop, people trust the cop, period. Nothing. You're not going to change that. Even with all of this, a lot of people, they're still going to trust the cop. Now, that may change because of, a lot of these protests, but for the most part, nah, man. You got a dude who's accused of committing a crime, even if it's wrong, and the cop says you did it, they're going to believe the police officer. So what do you think happens when they see cops marching around the streets and they see protesters or riots? They're going to believe the police officers. That's it. At the very least, I'll tell you a secret. A lot of these Americans living in the suburbs, not in my backyard, they would say. So you know what they're thinking deep down inside? They're probably thinking, I don't know or care. Just don't let them come here. And they're coming. They're going to come. So I'll tell you what, I'm sure these people in the suburbs are like, send in the troops, baby. And just get them out. I don't care what they're doing. They just don't care. I'm willing to bet, personally, most of these people in these suburbs that Trump so desperately wants would pay a good sum of money for private security to protect themselves. Like we saw in St. Louis with the McCloskeys, they hired private security because they don't care about what the protests are doing, what they want, where they're going. They just don't want it in my backyard. So if Trump says, I'm going to send in law enforcement to protect you, keep the crime down, they're going to be like, good, because we're chilling, man. What's the average person doing right now? You can't go out, so you're sitting at home watching movies on Amazon or something, watching Netflix, I suppose, maybe ordering some takeout. And you don't want to deal with people in the streets screaming and throwing stuff. So they'll take what they can get. And what they want is security. And that's what I think this is all about. The narrative, the lies. They're trying to scare people. The far right is coming for you. They'll come to your homes. Yeah, please spare me. Right now, we are seeing 60 plus days of violence. And Bill Barr called it out, and the Democrats had no response to this. This is why I'm fed up with them. No response. A couple of them gave Bill Barr the opportunity to respond politely. I can respect that. But so much of it was grandstanding and lying. You're attacking peaceful demonstrators and arresting them. And then Bill Barr would be like, well, actually, I reclaim my time. I'm speaking now. You want to make false claims? Fine. But let the man respond. Oh, they can't, because he would debunk their entire narrative. I want to show you something very important. This is a story from Michael Tracy I've highlighted several times. 2 months since the riots and still no national conversation. The story from Michael Tracy shows how journalists are ignoring the bigger picture. The small towns that are being destroyed and vandalized. How the riots swept across this country and hit places most people just ignored. He mentioned some of these towns early on. He says Atlantic City, Fort Wayne, Green Bay, Olympia. They all underwent riots and nobody knew about it. Where are the journalists to come out and say, look at what's happening to small town America. Look what's happening in our backyards. Fortunately, Michael Tracy hopped in a car, drove around and actually talked to people. But what about the Daily Beast? What about Vox, CNN, MSNBC? They don't want you to know it's happening because then Trump would win back the suburbs. You see how this is being, that's why they say, Trump is opposing Joe Biden's plans for urbanizing the suburbs, and Trump is desperate to win back middle-aged white women and stuff like that. Maybe he will. I don't know what's going to happen, man. Everybody's convinced they're going to win, but I will show you this. From the Boston Herald. Joe Biden out to wage war on America's suburbs, from Betsy McCaughey. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. If you live in the suburbs, or you're a city dweller eyeing to move to a quiet cul-de-sac where your kids can play, you need to know about Joe Biden's plan for a federal takeover of local zoning laws. Biden wants to ramp up an Obama-era social engineering scheme called Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, which barely got started before Donald Trump took office, vowing to stop it. Biden's plan is to force suburban towns with single-family homes and minimum lot sizes to build high-density affordable housing smack in the middle of their leafy neighborhoods. Starting in 2015, Obama's Department of Housing and Urban Development bureaucrats imposed a cookie-cutter requirement, balanced housing in every suburb. Balanced meant affordable even for people who need federal vouchers. Towns were obligated to do more than simply not discriminate. As HUD's 2013 proposal explained, towns had to make it possible for low-income minorities to choose suburban living and provide adequate support to make their choices possible. Towns had to scrap zoning, build bigger water and sewer lines to support high-density living, expand schools and social services, and add mass transit, all pushing up local taxes. Towns that refused would lose their federal aid. It is very simply the urbanization of the suburbs. This is the big battle. I think so. Because cities are going to vote for, they're going to vote for Democrats. Rural areas are going to vote for Republicans. There are some suburban areas that are flickering back and forth, and both sides desperately want to win them over. Now, you can make your arguments as to why Joe Biden and the Obama administration wanted to urbanize these suburban districts. Some would say it's to, solve problems. It would actually benefit people. And others would argue it's because it would alter the demographics of these of the areas and thus the politics of them. And I mean just Democrats in terms of like city dweller liberals moving to the suburbs because of, metro lines, spreading out those who live in dense cities. And there's some positive arguments for this. Getting people out of cities, sure. I mean, it's happening now because of a lot of factors, notably the riots. And for whatever reason, some people don't want it. They want to keep their suburbs as nice, quiet little towns. And that makes sense, too. You want a place close enough to the city where you can go into work, but you want to keep your home outside of the noise and the commotion and the pollution. For whatever your argument may be, I'm not concerned about it. In the sense that the point I'm trying to bring up, when you hear about riots, when you hear about law enforcement, when you hear about a wall of moms, it's because they are fighting for control of the suburbs, and they need those votes to swing in their direction. Trump knows it. Democrats know it. The media knows it, and that's why they're panicking. We'll see how things play out. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all then.